Hesiod of ancient Greece describes an ancient nuclear holocaust that shook the whole world. He describes an ancient nuclear holocaust. In the text of Ancient People, he says, there is a description of a terrible war that shook the whole earth. This war, which may have been the cause of the beginning of the decline of that civilization, was waged with the use of sophisticated weapons. Now we know that the Sahara was once a very lush green place, almost like the Amazon, and now it has become a desert. They've even found melted sand grains, and geologists believe that only a nuclear event could have done that. Now, the descriptions here of our ancient texts convey the image of a conflict which caused severe destruction. An age-old conflict probably ended in a nuclear holocaust. And it seems extreme, but reading the descriptions of ancient traditions, one cannot help but think of such a possibility. References to a missile in which the power of the universe was shut down, to a white light glow, and an unprecedented fire that poured everywhere, to a deadly dust that covered those who survived the catastrophe, can hardly go unnoticed. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. I'm translating this for you from the Greek article. I'll leave a link below. So there was a white glow, an unprecedented fire pouring everywhere, and a deadly dust covering those who survived the catastrophe. It's worth quoting the text of the Peoples, in which, among other things, the reader can discern the great similarities that exist and draw his own conclusions. From the Theogony of Hesiod, where the descriptions of that terrible war between the gods and the Titans is made, we transfer the following characteristic passage. The land and the sea were boiling endlessly, and the Titans were enveloped in a hot breath. And as the flame went up in the sky, no matter how brave they were, the Titans were blinded. They were blinded by the white light from the lightning. Heat, unprecedented fire poured everywhere, and what the eyes saw and what the ears heard, it was as if heaven and earth were mixed. One researcher might well have suspected that the lightning of Jupiter, quote unquote, that was the weapon that gave the gods victory in the battle of the Titans, was in fact nothing different from today's nuclear bomb. Even more characteristic is the description in the Indian text Popol Vuh, quote, an iron thunderbolt fell from heaven to earth. The corpses of the men of the tribes of Vrishnes and of Anchika became unrecognizable. Their hair and nails had fallen out. The birds' feathers had changed color. The food had been poisoned, and those who survived the catastrophe had been covered in deadly dust, end quote. The Indian Mahabharata states, quote, it was a missile that enclosed the power of the universe. It was a column of smoke and flame brilliant like 10,000 suns, rising with all its might. It was a new and unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt that reduced the tribes of Vrishnis and Andakas to ashes. The bodies were burned, and no one could recognize them. Hair and nails fell from the bodies. The birds turned white. A few hours later, all the food was contaminated. To escape this fire, the soldiers fell into the rivers with their clothes and weapons. A hot wind started blowing. The universe was shrouded in heat, as if it were sick with a high fever. Elephants and other war animals were struck by the force of the weapon. The waters became so hot that whatever lived inside them caught fire. A fatal spear, like a stick of death, it measured 3 cubits and 6 feet, endowed with the power of lightning, the man with 1,000 eyes, devastating all living creatures. The astonishing similarity of the descriptions of Royal Vuh and Mahabharata, but also the provocatively similar names of the tribes, Vrishnes and Anchikas, on the one hand and Vrishnis and Andakas on the other hand, you can see how similar the names are, lead us to the conclusion that these two texts describe the same event. Elsewhere in the Mahabharata, we read about the collision in the air of two of the above-mentioned weapons. The two weapons met each other in the middle of the air. Then the earth began to tremble along with all its mountains and seas and trees, and all living creatures were burned by the energy of the weapons and badly affected. The heavens were on fire, and the 10 points of the horizon were filled with smoke. The Old Testament describes of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah can also be described as a mythological depiction of the sufferings of that great war. The Lord rained down Sodom and Gomorrah, Theon, and fire from heaven, and destroyed these cities and all that it was around about them. Another interesting element that the ancient traditions convey to us is that of the construction of the famous lightning of Zeus by the Cyclops. According to ancient Greek mythology, the Cyclops were the ones who created this invincible weapons. As we know, they were one-eyed huge giants. Okay, the Cyclops were the ones, they said, who created this invincible weapon, which they gave to Zeus to defeat the Titans. From the comments of Artemis, quote-unquote, we read the opinion of Eratosthenes, who claimed that the conspiracy of the gods against the Titans took place in the altar where the Cyclops made the terrible weapon. I have a cover on fire so as not to see the lightning power. And those whose scientists, who would obviously wear a peculiar costume with a helmet, which gave them a different strange image, were named by mythology Cyclops, perhaps? Now, in this case is quite bold, but also quite probable if one takes into account the above descriptions, as well as a 10,000-year-old rock painting found in a cave in the Tassili Valley on the edge of the Sahara Desert, which shows a figure of a man dressed in a strange uniform, strongly reminiscent of that of astronauts or nuclear plant workers. The helmet of the uniform reminds us of the description of a cyclops, as it has a round skylight on the forehead to allow vision. This was from Nexus Magazine, May 1998, and I'll leave a link below for you for the Greek article, but that's what I've translated for you. It could have been someone who was wearing a protective suit, and strange that the South American mythologies and the Indian Mahabharata have similar names to the tribes that were extinguished because of this ancient technology. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support.